You've seen the Black Mirror episode. We have also seen all of these TikToks of people being denied plane rides and denied train rides. But there is a twist. The Chinese social credit score doesn't actually exist, at least not in the way that we have been led to believe in Western media. Now, in this video, I'm going to give you the latest, the absolute latest on the Chinese social credit score. I mean, what is with all of these videos we're seeing? We're seeing them, right? Also, how is it different than what we already have here? Plus, we'll talk about the pros and cons of credit scores, social and otherwise. Where does accountability end and straight up intrusion begin? Do you remember that nosedive episode of Black Mirror? Now, to summarize this plot in 1 minute, for those of you who have not seen it, they live in a society that has embraced a social credit score. So everybody becomes fake. Now, a woman starts to lose her standing by having these little social fumbles throughout the day, which are actually pretty normal, but it builds and builds and she's ostracized from her friend group. Finally, she winds up in jail and she's having a full-blown meltdown. But luckily for her, this pretty cute guy in the cell across the way from her is also having a meltdown. So we just assume they live happily ever after. Now, that's science fiction, of course, but we are not too far off. Some social circles are pretty fake. They're very fake, and you have to whitewash yourself for office jobs, which we should all know by now. Now, how is that different from that episode of Black Mirror? And how is that different from how society already operates? It just gives a numerical value for social capital. It's social climbing. It's social climbing, basically. And you had better be good at it, or else you're not going to make it. You're not going to hit that luck. You're not going to get the right associates. And it's just basically knowing your associates' numbers. Now, I'm sure China also has fake groups and social climbers as well. But I think that we are getting our facts jumbled on the Chinese system. The Chinese social credit system has been greatly exaggerated in Western media. They have tested various private programs, and there have been some local regional programs, which we have discussed, but it's nothing like the way it's been made out on the internet. It's not a nationwide score coming directly from the CCP, at least not yet. They're working through a lot of ideas and how to implement them if they do decide they want to implement them. I was very disappointed to find the very boring state of the Chinese social credit score. Also, as an American, I like to judge other people for implementing ideas that they got from us. Like for the Nazis, how dare the Nazis go full eugenics when we only went half eugenics? And now it's, how dare the Chinese apply a credit score, the idea that they got from us?
How dare you?
What is the Chinese social credit system? Well, it was an idea that was first debuted in 2002 at their party Congress. Then, or since then, it has been expanded on ever since, including some guidelines which were just released in March of this year. But there's still no top-down system yet. What happened in the simplest and shortest possible terms is this. The Chinese saw our credit system and they thought, well, this has its benefits. Like us, they needed to see which individuals were likely to repay their loans. And they adapted it to meet their needs, just like we adapt their stuff to meet our needs, like Chinese food is different here than it is over there. They adapt ideas to fit needs. Now, a lot of what we've seen is footage from pilot programs run by private companies like Zima credit or Sesame credit. We've probably heard it referred to as Sesame credit. The Zima credit score is between 350 and 950, and this was implemented in 2015. Now, you've probably seen this in the videos going around. It was a private credit score / loyalty program that tracked users' trustworthiness. It made a lot of news because there were sound bites coming out that maybe they're going to start tracking people on video game usage, and that became sensationalized. Even though it was associated with Alibaba, which is a major company, and people were able to get these microloans on that system if they had a good score. Now, as of 2020, the Chinese government has revoked Ant's license to run Zima as a standalone credit system. Instead, they've integrated it into the National Financial Credit Registry. Honestly, I see why the Zima / Sesame credit score raised a lot of eyebrows. They evaluated users on 5 categories: your payment history, your contract follow through, your accurate info, actual personal info, behavior, yes, that includes video games, and your social circle. And there's even a dating site over there that uses credit scores, that credit score, to rate users. Now, at the time, they also had permission from the government to use people's personal information. This was not a place for social outcasts. Obviously, not a place for social outcasts. However, it was voluntary to participate. And one benefit it has over our credit system is that you can show trustworthiness without having participated in the system. Now, there was this video that came out recently of this girl, this Chinese girl, who was like, I have never heard of a credit score before. I don't know what you all are talking about. And I see no reason why she'd be lying.
As someone who has lived in China for my whole life, I've never heard of such thing until someone online started asking me about this. And honestly, I'm really curious. Where did you guys hear this from?
Now, we cannot talk about the Sesame credit score without talking about our credit score, which is the OG credit score, what we know as a personal credit score. And that has been around since about 1995 when Freddie Mac began using the FICO score to judge mortgage applications. Now, there are earlier forms going back to the 1950s, but the score that we know, the one that controls our lives, that rolled out in the 1990s. That's actually pretty recent. It's like 30 years ago. The credit score uses data from the big agencies, which is Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, to judge how likely people are to pay back their loans. Now, our grandparents didn't really have to worry about this. They didn't have to worry about being judged on a credit score, but today it really dictates a lot of our lives. They decide where we can live and if we can get a loan to better ourselves based on this score that came out 30 years ago. But there is a trade-off. No, our grandparents didn't need to worry about this, but they also needed to have personal relationships with the bankers. They needed a steady job. They needed letters of recommendation. They had to put a higher down payment down on their mortgage. The banks were really just guessing on who was going to pay back their loan at that point. Now, today, we have this numerical value. We have our credit score, and we don't really have to have our bosses write us a letter of recommendation to get a car. Although we do need people to co-sign. We're not going to go into it right now. How do you get a credit score? Now, to get a credit score, you have to be in the system. So you got to get that credit card and you got to pay it off every single month, or else you don't get an apartment and you're homeless. And no, this is funny because no, you can't just pay your bills every month. You have to participate in the system of credit. It is really annoying. And I hate this system because it is against everything our country supposedly stands for. So I got to sign up with Visa so that I can have an apartment, which has absolutely nothing to do with Visa. Make it make sense. Who gave them the right to intrude on our lives like this? And I thought the only thing certain in this world was death and taxes. But apparently it's death, taxes, and Equifax. So that's great. You want to talk about the beast system? You want to talk about the beast system. My normal viewers are like, no, we don't even know what that is. This is the beast system. If you don't know that reference because you aren't normal, the beast system is a conspiracy theory that says our ruling elites, they are trying to get us into a system of control, and that will control every aspect of our lives. It's from the book of Revelations in the Bible, and it says that people will need to have the mark of the beast in order to buy and sell. I will do a whole video on it one day. I promise you that. But these people were talking in the comments of the Palantir List video. Check that video out if you haven't seen it. And a lot of the conspiracy verse thinks that our ruling elites are trying to get us into this antichrist mark of the beast system. And I'm like, girl, they already did that. That's called your credit score. You are way too late. I already sold my soul to Chase in the terms of service. Whatever. I forgot. We're here to make fun of China. We're here to make fun of China with absolutely no irony. Fine. China recently released its guidelines for individual social credit scores. They did this in March, and it mostly applies to business and organization, but they did touch on individuals. I will put it on the screen and I will summarize it for you so that you don't have to read it if you don't want. Nobody likes to read it anymore. They want to establish an individual person's credit in an orderly manner, as opposed to a chaotic mess, in accordance with laws and regulations. Sounds like a lot of red tape and delays, but that's okay. It gives specific scores to certain professions that deal with the public. Here we have the Better Business Bureau and Yelp reviews for that. and they let localities and departments do their own credit evaluations. But it says that using personal information or non-credit information is strictly prohibited. That is the opposite of the social control that the Zima or Sesame credit system was supposedly doing. So they've learned from their mistakes. That's good. Now, this is on a national level. However, they have been doing trial runs on a local level for a few years now, about 10 years now. It's been a while. And we discussed this about 6, 7, maybe 8 months ago. We discussed this within the past year. This small rural town, they rolled out this trial social credit score, and it was a net plus, but there were a lot of drawbacks. Like these elderly people, they had to meet these cleanliness requirements, but they didn't have any help. So it just punished them for being elderly. And I'm like, doesn't life punish you for being elderly enough? Do we need the government to really pile on? Ugh. Of course, if you have money, you can just hire someone to clean in front. But if you're poor and you're old, you can't do that. And it really hurt these people. But the town was clean. So either you live in a rich town or you fine people for not being clean. A homeowners association can get the job done, but that's a completely voluntary agreement. So this documentary, if you watched it, it's like the HOA from hell. Ugh. One of my regulars commented that I was defending the social credit system in one of my videos. Yeah, probably I was. I can explore and defend ideas that I do not support. This is called thinking, and you're supposed to be able to do it by the time you're 18. Of course, nobody can do it even when they're 81 anymore, so whatever. Do you know why we have HOAs? It's to keep the place clean. Do I have an HOA? No. But I do notice a difference in the neighborhoods who have one versus those who don't. And for those of you who are not familiar with HOAs, homeowners associations, it's a group of petty tyrants that dictate the rules of how you are supposed to keep your own house. And people pay them for the privilege. I get it, okay? The downside is that they're very annoying. Why would I, a grown-ass woman, need a hall monitor? Now, the upside is that the streets are clean and the neighborhood has a cohesive look to it. This documentary linked at the bottom, it shows a town that has these professional Karens going around to people's homes and giving them a score on what is tidy and what is not, and then demanding they make repairs. Okay, watch it and let me know what you think. We don't have anything nearly as severe as that here, but as we know from hoarders, the city can condemn your property if it is too filthy. And that's why we don't let it get that bad. And this, when I say bad, I mean many dead cats kind of bad. That's a lot more severe than what you'll get nicked for in this documentary, in this rural Chinese community. If you don't watch Hoarders, I'm like, why? Where do you get your zoning law information if you don't watch Hoarders? You read it? That's crazy. Yes, the city will condemn your if your house turns into a private dump for your junk addiction, which a lot of people have now, unfortunately. It's like an emergency stopgap for the town. And yes, it technically infringes on your property rights, but I'm still not mad about it because there have to be limits. Now, in this town in China, they set the limits too short. But this is the debate that people have been having about socialism versus full-fledged communism for years. When does government intrusion start to be a problem and infringe on our liberties? And when do our neighbors' rights to live in a clean community come into play? We're not going to solve this in this episode. They've been having this debate since forever. Our great-grandparents were having this debate. And the fact is, you don't need the government to do it. Society sets its own limits and its own standards. And I wonder how much of the hysteria around the social credit score is just us coming to terms with the world that we are already living in. And we are trying to push that off on the boogeyman of Red China. But then I remember the Cultural Revolution, and I think, no, we should be wary of them. We should always be like, what y'all up to? Now, we covered the Cultural Revolution on this channel in the 3 body problem video. Check that out if you haven't already seen it. Mao got the kids all worked up. They killed all the sparrows and everybody starved, or a lot of people starved. It was a big, big mess. Sociologist Zhang Lifan actually says that the social credit score, current social credit score, is an attempt to rebuild some of the trust that was lost during the Cultural Revolution. He is a Chinese sociologist, so he knows a lot more about the topic than I do, obviously. I am an outsider. But to an outsider, introducing a social credit score to solve the problem of community trust is like trying to dislodge a bullet by shooting it. Technically, it can work. I mean, technically. Now, when I was 18, it was a few years ago already, but when I was 18, I remember complaining about the credit score. I was like, this is nonsense. These private entities don't have the right to infringe on my life like this. Nowhere in the Constitution does it blah, 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 blah. Guess what? It doesn't matter. Now I have a good credit score and Fight Club didn't happen. Oh, I wish Fight Club happened, but it didn't. We all play this game. And no, I would never date anyone with a credit score under 650. I don't care what the Constitution says. You're taking your life in your hands by slumming it down there. Also, if someone with a credit score under 700 tries to marry my sister, I am going to stand up at the wedding. When the minister says, does anyone know why these two should not be wed? I will raise my hand and be like, I do. He's broke. Get away from my sister. Also the Constitution. Don't come at me in the comment section. Anyone coming at me in the comment section right now got a low score. I don't want to hear it. And it's not just credit scores, okay? We rate people on Yelp reviews. We rate professionals on Yelp reviews and Google reviews. Customers can share their experience at the shop. And they're supposed to be honest, but they can get manipulated. Like sour individuals, sour customers can amplify themselves through these accounts, and groups of people can review bomb a place, and it can be very unfair. Also, we are naturally programmed to give more weight to negative reviews because we're more scared of being burned than we are hopeful of getting something good. Do you know what I mean? That's just the way our mind calculus works. And there's this new T app. Have you heard of the T app? Someone actually mentioned it in one of my live streams a few weeks ago. And it's basically like a Yelp for men. Girls, they can upload pictures of this guy that they're thinking about dating, and other women in the area can be like, oh, you should date him, he's great, or don't date him, he is a scrub, stay away from him, stay far, far away. Now look, nobody wants to be reviewed by their exes, obviously, of course. However, we do want to warn our fellow ladies about psychos and boys, and I'm just going to leave that there. We are coming to a point where nothing we do is private anyway. And I'm going to make half of you really, really mad right now, which I love to do. But follow me here. How much of this benefits us? I mean, yes, it's bad to have a credit score. Okay, bad. But we get to put down a lower mortgage payment, and we don't have to bail our banker out on Christmas because some angel showed him a world in which he does not exist. It's a great movie, not good for life. We don't live in these small towns anymore where people can vouch for us. That's just a way of the past. Also, those small towns get catty as hell. If you mess up in high school, your grandkids have to hear about it. So there's a plus and a minus. There's a trade-off to everything. And I'm honestly torn about which is better. You tell me what you think in the comments. Thank you, and I will see you next week.